Tom, thanks so much for taking some time today. I'm excited to talk about a topic that I know interests a lot of people, especially those of us who are really trying to look out for our health, and that is antibiotics. What do they do, and what can we do about what they do? So first of all, if you wouldn't mind, we all kind of have a sense of what an antibiotic is and what the good and the bad, but maybe you could share that with us from your perspective first off, just so we really know a little bit better.
Oh, sure. I happen to have just spent the last 2 days at the International Microbiome Congress here in San Diego. And there were 3 presentations on antibiotics and their impact on the microbiome. So first, we have to say that antibiotics have saved millions and millions and millions of lives. And they're a great tool to use, a great tool. I am not anti-antibiotics. However, they have become so overused in our culture today. They're sprayed on vegetables just before harvest to keep the bugs off of them. They're just, the vast majority of antibiotics are given to animals, to cattle and chickens and pork. So there's antibiotic residue in the meats that we eat. There's antibiotic residue in the vegetables that we eat. So we're getting these minute dosages, which by itself is not necessarily a big problem, but the accumulative aspect of all of these minute dosages adds up really quick. And an antibiotic means it kills bacteria. Antibiotic means let's go after bacteria. And unfortunately, most of the antibiotics are not selective. They're like coming in with a big shotgun that just sprays everything in terms of the bacteria in the gut. So when you need an antibiotic, and sometimes we do need it, you need to take the antibiotic. Now, in our practice with our patients, we always try the more natural antibiotics first that do not have the same type of scatter zone effect throughout the entire intestine that pharmaceutical antibiotics do. But the natural antibiotics usually are not as strong, that they take a little bit longer, or if it's not that severe an infection, you may be able to get away with using the natural antibiotics. But sometimes you need the big guns. And when you do, you have a dramatic impact on the long-term vitality of the good guys in your gut. Long-term. A couple of the studies that were presented yesterday were just shocking to see. 6 months, a year, 2 years later, the microbiome had not come back to its previous state before taking the antibiotic. So the idea that if you need an antibiotic, you take it, absolutely. But then you have to know, how do I rebuild the good guys in my gut, which is the main protection we have against every assault coming in, is screened by the good bacteria in our gut first. So you want a strong army there to protect you, right? And the pharmaceutical antibiotics wipe out a vast majority of the army that's there to protect you.
So this is really important, right? Because I think we all get that message that sometimes you got to do what you got to do. Sometimes you need the big guns. And at the same time, those of us who are mindful of our health and who have gone through that process of, all through that process of taking that antibiotic, I didn't feel right. My stomach felt bloated. I had a bit of a headache, whatever it may be, stuff that happens, side effects that you're even warned about by your doctor when they prescribe them. So we come out of that and we say, okay, I did that. I did what I had to do, but now I really want to get back to that optimal health. What can we do to rebuild the intestine following having to take around a dosage of antibiotics?
That's a really good question and a critical question. And every mother needs to know this. Every mother. Every person needs to know it, but moms, because your kids likely are going to get a prescription for antibiotics, and you can't tell when they're feeling bad afterwards, and they can't say to you, Mom, my gut's not working the same as it did before I took that medication 3 weeks ago. They're not going to say that. But it may be that there is an impact. Well, there is an impact, but it may be that they have symptoms and they just can't even express them. So it's really important that everyone knows, when I need an antibiotic, what do I do to deal with the scatter damage that occurs from taking the antibiotic. Hopefully it's successful for the reason it's given to you, but then what do I do? And there are a number of things, but the two main categories that I like to look at are foods that you can eat or avoid, and then nutrition that you can take. So first, the foods. Obviously, you don't want to, when your gut's been compromised, you don't want to tax your gut. So you don't want to throw stuff down there that is more difficult to your body to deal with. And you know, I put a lot of emphasis on this in my book, The Autoimmune Fix, where I talk about 3 things that cause problems for everyone. If you read the science, for everyone, they get problems with wheat, they get problems with dairy, and they get problems with sugar. So certainly during the antibiotic and after the antibiotic for a period of time, avoid foods that are inflammatory foods like wheat, dairy, sugar, bad fats, fried foods, the grease ball food that some of us eat, you know, too often, or we eat it once in a while. And we know we really shouldn't eat this, but once in a while, who cares? You know, if we rationalize it that way, if you've got a brain that does that, and you rationalize eating garbage once in a while, well, that's your call. But when your system's been compromised, you might want to be a little more restrictive on throwing gasoline down there that just causes more fire, more inflammation. So the first thing is avoid the bad foods. The second thing is, what are some of the good foods?
Just real quick, for how long, Tom? So as I know a lot of people watching are like, avoid the bad foods. Okay, how long do I have to go without eating what I like? What's a period that makes?
You know, that's a really good question. I'm not familiar with any studies that are conclusive on that. I'm not familiar with that. Symptomatically, oh gosh, it takes maybe a week, 10 days. And your bloating will go away. But does that mean the entire microbiome's repopulated, reinoculated the way it should be? No, of course not. But you feel better, you know, within a week to 10 days, and that's certainly going to help. But my guess, and it's best estimates from what I've read in the literature, somewhere between 2 and 4 weeks.
Okay, thank you.
2 and 4 weeks to rebuild. Now, how important is it? 70% of your immune system is in the gut. 70% of your immune system is made up of this good bacteria there to protect you and the immune cells that are talking to that bacteria all the time. Why is 70% of everything there to fight colds and viruses and bacteria and cancer? 70% of your entire immune system is in the gut. Why? Because that's where you get most of the exposure of things that aren't good for you.
Right.
And so you've got to have the army there to protect you. Well, you take antibiotics and you've wiped out a lot of the army. So you have to rebuild the army. You know, there's a number of studies that show when you take antibiotics, the incidence of people that have different diseases later on down the road, like kids, the number of antibiotics they take before the age of 5 has a direct correlation on their IQ. When they're 8, 9, 10, 11, it has a direct correlation on the number of kids that get asthma, or the number of kids that get recurrent ear infections. And they see the more antibiotics early, the more vulnerable those kids are to get sicker later. So that's another reason why, if you need antibiotics, and if you need them, you take them, but then you need a rebuilding program afterwards. So the first thing is avoid the foods that throw gasoline on the fire.
Right, 2 to 4 weeks. Okay, got that part. So what should we be eating that really helps rebuild my army? I want my army rebuilt. I want to be ready for whatever's coming next.
Yeah. The first food comes from my friends, Dr. Michael Ash and Anthony Haynes in England. They teach there, very smart doctors, and help, and they teach physicians, they teach nutritionists. And they did the research on this, and it's impressive research when you read it. And that is, and they call it stewed apples. I call it applesauce, right? And what you do, and it's unbelievable how effective it is at healing your gut when the gut's been damaged by antibiotics and helping to populate with the good bacteria that should be there. So what I do for 2 people is I'll take 4 apples. I dice them up to about, maybe a 1/2 inch size pieces, maybe 3/4 of an inch, doesn't matter, but small enough to be on a spoon when you're eating it. And you throw it in a pot, and if the pot's this big and the apples are up to here, you have about 1/3 of the way up the apples with water. So you pour water in to come up to about 1/3 of the way. You don't want them soaked and swimming in water, but about 1/3, and you can eyeball it. And then I throw in a handful of raisins and then a lot of cinnamon. And you cook it. And you bring it to a boil and you let it cook for about 8 to 10 minutes. That's it. Now, and how do you know how long to cook it? When the skin, wash the apples first. They should be organic, but wash the apples first. Leave the skins on them. Don't peel the skin. And what happens is the skin, it starts to get a little shine to it, a shimmer. When you see the shimmer, it's done. Turn off the heat. And then just eat some apples. Eat some stewed apples. In England, they call them stewed apples, but eat your applesauce.
Okay.
Why the shimmer on the skin of the apple is you've released the pectin, the fiber from inside the skin. Now it's on the surface, so as soon as you eat it, the pectin is easily accessible to the bacteria and to the lining of your gut. And so it helps to heal the lining of your gut really quickly, and it helps the bacteria have access to that particular food.
Plus, with raisins and cinnamon, it tastes great. I've actually done that before, so it's a really good thing. Now, how often or how many rounds of stewed apples should somebody do? How many days in a row? What does that look like?
There's no studies on how often, as far as I know, but I recommend twice a day. And just a small bowl, maybe 5, 6, 10 spoonfuls twice a day. And you're just giving really great nutrition. We've all heard an apple a day keeps the doctor away. This is why. This is one of the main reasons why, is that it heals a leaky gut. It helps to seal a leaky gut. The pectin does. And you just have to release the pectin from the apples so that it's easily accessible and doesn't have to go down 20 feet in your intestines with lots of digesting going on before the pectin's released. So you cook it till the skins shine a little bit, and the result is you've got this great source of gut healing food.
And do that for a week, for about a week?
I would do it at least for a week, and then after that, I haven't taken antibiotics in a long time, but if I were to take an antibiotic, I would do the apples twice a day for a week, and then maybe once every few days when I think about it for the rest of the month. So I think a 1-month protocol overall is going to help to ensure that you've nailed this thing. You've rebuilt a healthier gut than what you had before the need for the antibiotic.
I am sure that there is a huge group of people that is watching this video that have said, I always heard that apple a day keeps the doctor away, and had no idea why until Dr. Tom just gave us the dope, the down skinny on why an apple a day keeps the doctor away. So thanks a lot. What else should we do?
It's very cool, isn't it? It's cool to know this stuff.
It's really cool. It is cool.
Yeah. Next is, in terms of the food category, is chicken bone broth. Chicken bone broth, the collagen in chicken bone broth acts as a natural prebiotic, meaning it feeds the good bacteria, and it helps to seal the leaky gut, which is the damage that occurs when you take an antibiotic. You poke holes, it's not really holes, but there's a cheesecloth. Your gut's a tube. It's 20, 25 feet long. It winds around in the inside of your abdomen. The inside of the tube is lined with cheesecloth. And that's why only certain size molecules can get through. So digestion is breaking food smaller and smaller and smaller until it's small enough to go through the cheesecloth. But what happens when you take antibiotics is you get tears in the cheesecloth. And if you get tears in the cheesecloth, now bigger molecules of food get through the tears in the cheesecloth into the bloodstream before they've been broken down small enough, like beef. It's hard to break down beef into the individual amino acids that our bodies use to make new muscle. That's why you've got 20 feet of intestines, is that the enzymes have to break it down, and it takes a while. But when you get tears in the cheesecloth, The beef is being broken down a little bit, but it's still big molecules, goes right through. They're called macromolecules, big molecules, gets into the bloodstream, and your immune system says, whoa, what's this? This is not good for me. I better fight this. And now you make antibodies. The immune system makes antibodies to that food because it's not something your body can use to make new muscle or new bone cells. It's a macromolecule. It's way too big. So that's the person that does a 90 food blood test panel for allergies, and they come back allergic to 30 foods, 20, 30 foods. Oh my God, that's everything I eat. Of course it is, because your immune system's trying to protect you because these macromolecules are getting in there that shouldn't get in there. You have to heal the gut. So that's where the apples come in. This is where chicken bone broth comes in. I haven't seen any studies on beef bone broth. A lot of people do beef bone broth. I suspect that it is as effective, maybe more effective. I just haven't seen the studies on it. But chicken bone broth, you've all heard, you know, what does grandma give you when you're sick? Chicken soup.
Yeah, exactly.
And when she makes a chicken soup, she's cooking the bones down in there and then filtering out, you know, straining out the bones to give you the soup. Well, you've got bone broth.
And it tastes really good.
Tastes really good. So chicken bone broth, and what I do with chicken bone broth is I buy it. I buy like 6 bags of it, and I keep it in the freezer, and I have a bag every couple of days that I just thaw out, put in a pot, put on a low heat. In 20 minutes, it's warm, and I add turmeric to it. Turmeric is a great anti-inflammatory spice. It's probably the most potent of all natural anti-inflammatories in terms of the range of things that it does for you. One study had over 330 references of different pathways that you develop an anti-inflammatory state by using turmeric. So I use turmeric in my cooking maybe once a week, twice a week, but I always put it in my chicken bone broth. So chicken bone broth is another food that you can use. Next are vegetables. There's this substance that's made in your gut called butyrate or butyric acid. Now, you have a whole new body every 7 years, right? Some cells reproduce very quickly, like the inside lining of your gut. It's every 3 to 7 days, you have a whole new lining to your gut. And some cells are very slow, like your brain cells reproduce slowly, heart cells reproduce slowly, but they all reproduce. But the inside lining of the gut is very, very fast. And the fuel to build the new cells is butyrate or butyric acid. So how does your body make butyrate? And if you don't have enough butyrate, you make your house out of straw instead of out of brick. And the result is just go on PubMed or go to Google and type in butyrate and colon cancer. Here come the studies. The lower the butyrate level, the higher the risk of colon cancer. Why? Because you reproduce your cells every 3 to 7 days in the gut. And if you don't have a butyrate, you make your house out of straw instead of brick, and you're much more vulnerable to developing cancer cells in your gut. That's why you want adequate amounts of butyrate. How does your body get butyrate? It's the action of the good bacteria in your gut, which you've just damaged severely with antibiotics. It's the action of the good bacteria in your gut on vegetable fiber. So you need vegetable fiber. There's 2 kinds of fiber. There's 2 categories. Soluble means it breaks down really easily, and insoluble, meaning that fiber doesn't break down very easily at all. So your body doesn't absorb it. It kind of goes in and goes out. Goes in one end and goes out the other end. But it's the insoluble fiber that the good bacteria in your gut converts to make butyrate. So you want more fiber so that you can make more butyrate, so you can have healthier cells that have been damaged by taking the antibiotics, right? So what are the foods that you use to increase butyric acid, butyrate levels? The foods are called pre-biotics, not probiotics. Probiotic is a technical name for the good bacteria. Pre-biotics mean they feed the good bacteria. So just go to Google and type in list of prebiotic foods. Zoom, here they come. And there's lots of them. Bananas, sweet potatoes, all tuber vegetables. Now, what I do when I go shopping at the local natural food market, whether it's Whole Foods or one of the other natural food markets, because I always try to buy organic if I can. That's a whole nother discussion, but I try when I can. It's better to eat non-organic vegetables than not eating vegetables, though. So if you don't have access to organic, you get what you can, because you have to make butyrate for this discussion and many other reasons why you need vegetables. But when I go shopping, I just walk down the aisle. I take like 10 of the plastic bags, you know. As I'm walking through, I take a couple of each of the root vegetables they've got there. The sweet potatoes. I don't get white potatoes because they put more fat on. We can talk about that later. But I get sweet potatoes, rutabaga, turnips, parsnips, artichoke hearts, any root vegetable, anything that grows under the ground, carrots, beets. And when I'm cooking up vegetables at home, I'll take like a half of each one of those and just chop it up, just like you did your apples. Just chop it up, and I saute it in a little coconut oil or olive oil. I throw some garlic in there. I put some turmeric on it, and then those sauteed vegetables are part of my meal. And what I've done, and I also throw some baby bok choy in there, because I like baby bok choy as part of the cruciferous family, which is very anti-carcinogenic. But any vegetables you like with these root vegetables, you know, and I just hide, you know, some of them may be a little bitter tasting. You know how you get around that? Mix them in with everything else and throw some turmeric on it. And you can't taste the bitter ones, right? So the tuber vegetables are great sources of prebiotics. Result is, what do you have now? You've got a meal that tastes really good. I mean, if you're going out on a date, if you're a guy and you're going out on a date, you're going to wow this person. If you're, you know, because it's fun to chop vegetables in the kitchen and talk together. And I did that with my wife, you know, and I was cooking and she was just watching me, and right, it was great. I scored, you know, I was like, yes, I got this woman, and we got married. And but they taste really great, and it's a very powerful, beneficial, rebuilding the gut microbiome type of food to have. So that's vegetables, lots of root vegetables. The insoluble fibers are so helpful to produce more butyric acid and also to feed the good bacteria. And note, bad bacteria don't feed on these insoluble fibers. The good bacteria feed on these insoluble fibers. So when you're eating these vegetables, you're feeding the good guys to bring them back so they can fight the bad guys. There's always some bad guys around in your gut. We all have that. It's just that the good guys are supposed to be in a higher concentration to keep the bad guys in check.
So basically, this is fantastic. I mean, this is amazing. First of all, I love listening and learning the stuff you've heard about your whole life that you never knew why that was like that. Like an apple a day keeps the doctor away. So basically, for a couple of weeks, as soon as you're over the antibiotics, maybe up to 4 weeks, we want to start out with the stewed apples. Make sure we get some stewed apples, a little raisin, a little cinnamon, make those good a couple times a day. And then, again, cook them just like you said so that it releases the pectin, right? So that it goes in taking care of you. And then chicken bone broth or maybe even beef bone broth, do that as well. Same type of thing. And then basically a whole bunch of vegetables, especially tubular or root vegetables. And as you said, a great way to make them taste good is mix them up with other kinds of vegetables, throw in some garlic, throw in some turmeric, and it works out great. And that is a formula to rebuilding your intestines following a round of antibiotics.
One more category of foods, one more category.
All right.
And that is fermented vegetables. That I tell all of the patients to go to your local natural food store, whether it's Whole Foods or another one, and buy 4 or 5 different kinds of fermented vegetables. Just make sure they're not pasteurized, because pasteurization kills bacteria. You want the bacteria in there. That's why you're buying the fermented vegetables. And so you get sauerkraut, kimchi, fermented beets, curry flavored, Italian flavor. You'll see there's a variety of different kinds of fermented vegetables. Every vegetable, when it ferments, produces different families of the good bacteria that are supposed to be in your gut. And every vegetable is different for that. So beets, my body really likes the beets, fermented beets. I just noticed and I never liked cooked beets. As a kid, I'd never eat that stuff growing up. But now my body just really likes fermented beets. So every once in a while, or I'll have fermented beet juice. It's called kvass. But you get 4 or 5 different kinds, and every day, just in general in life, when you're rebuilding, you do this twice a day, but in general, once a day. And that is, you walk by the refrigerator and you take 1 forkful of one of the fermented vegetables. Just chew it up, swallow it down.
Mm-hmm.
And you vary which ones you have, because each family of vegetables produces different bacteria. And the key to health in your gut, I probably should have started with this. The key to health in your gut is the diversity of your microbiome, the good bacteria in there. So you want a diversity. You want, because there's thousands of different families of bacteria in your gut. There's thousands of them. And so you don't just take a supplement that has Lactobacillus acidophilus in it. We'll talk about supplements maybe, but and it's good to do that, but that's what we did in the 1980s. That we now know it's a diversity. You need all of the good bacteria because they all interplay to form this army. You can't just have all privates in the army. There has to be some sergeants that tell the privates what to do, but then there has to be some lieutenants that coordinate the sergeants, and there has to be some colonels that coordinate the lieutenants. And that's what the different families of bacteria do. That's why you need the variety and the diversity of bacteria.
Well, Tom, really want to thank you, Dr. Tom, for spending this time with us, because as many of us that don't want to take the antibiotic, sometimes we do have to take the antibiotic, and at least now we know exactly what to do to build back our army for the rest of the stuff that we have to confront on a daily basis.
That's right. That's right. So, well, thank you. It's a pleasure being with you. Thanks.
Everybody out there, please leave your comments. We always love to hear from you. What you have to say dictates in large measure what we're going to talk about next as we put together this vast body of knowledge of how to live a healthy, amazing life. So please definitely share your feedback with us. And Dr. Tom, thanks again so very much for your vast wisdom. I really appreciate it. And at least now I know why an apple a day keeps the doctor away. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Ridgely.